G'day, how are you? Come in, come in. You know the family? Look, I mean, you know my history, you know what I stand for. But on the question of why the DLP, well, I guess we need to know a little bit of the history of the organisation to understand that. You know, back in 1955, with the Communist threat and the Labor Party and the fact that most of our sort of supporters were kicked out of the Hobart Conference, those good people, including MPs, upper house, lower house, state, workers and all sorts, separated and began the Democratic Labor Party. They stood on a principle. They made incredible sacrifices. They gave away parliamentary careers, they gave away, in some cases, their incomes to stand on a principle. And essentially we're the only party that can say that it was born on a principle and that its people stood on a principle. And it's pretty much the same today. In fact, there were people even here in South Australia whose families were vilified for what they did, whose children were spat on in the street. But they took all of that in their stride, knowing that the fight against communism was bigger than all of that. And I'd like to think that the DLP is like that today. In fact, I know it is. All of our people around the country, all of our candidates, all of our supporters, all of our members are the same kinds of people as they were back in 1955. We stand on principle and we'll fight on principle. And that's why I'm a member of the Democratic Labor Party and that's why I'm standing at this election.
Voting in this election is a little like buying a car. Liberal model, looks flashy, costs a fortune to run. ALP, worn out, falling to pieces, only goes if you push. And we know who's pushing. Wow, there's your best buy, the lively DLP.
Make this state a great state, a modern, up-to-date state for the one in the square for the DLP.
What's important at this election? Well, it's like you said, I mean, we're not hearing much of anything from our leaders that talks about vision at the moment. And the DLP has a vision for Australia. But I guess confronting us with issues right at this moment in time, I'd have to say that the ALP Green deal is going to cause this nation significant problems if the Labor Party returns. Now, in the old days, it was communism. But now we're standing against the Greens effectively, because if they grab the balance of power at this next election, we don't know what will be happening to the mining tax. We don't know what will happen to our mines in South Australia, because they've threatened to close them. But what we do know is that they'll be pushing for same-sex marriage. Now, just like the communist threat was back in the 50s and 60s, the Greens pose a serious threat to our way of life, and we stand opposed to that. And I would tell anyone that wants to vote for the Greens to think twice. And even more than that, anyone who wants to vote ALP in the upper house is effectively giving a preference to the Greens. And that's why we say they should be actually looking at the Labor alternative, the genuine Labor alternative, the Democratic Labor Party. That's my view, that's the view of my colleagues, and it's the view of wider Christian Australia at the moment that this is a significant problem. We need to do something about it, and really I ask you to tell all your friends not to vote Greens in the upper house, not to vote ALP because an ALP vote is a vote for the Greens, but to vote for the Labor alternative, the Democratic Labor Party. That's my message, and if you can help us get it out there, all the better. In 1964, the Democratic Labor Party campaign advert for the state of Victoria showed an old car, an ALP car, and it needed pushing. It was being pushed by a communist. I think the illusion there is quite clear. There's a different situation today. The communism isn't the threat that it once was, but I believe that the Greens have now replaced the communists as the threat that we need to deal with today. The Greens will push Labor. By the ALP Green Compact, the Greens will benefit from Labor distribution of preferences in all seats, especially in the Senate. In the Senate, they look likely to hold the balance of power, and we need to stop that. Because eventually we'll have a situation where the tail will wag the dog, where what the Greens want will become what the ALP needs to do. To stop that, simply don't vote Green. But more than that, a vote for the ALP in the Senate is also a vote for Green by their preference deals. We say, vote for a real Labor Party. Vote for the Democratic Labor Party. Real values, real Labor, no dirty tricks.